guys, how's it going? So I'm standing out in the dahlia area and you can see that we've had our first killing frost. And so I'm getting ready to dig and start preparing these dahlia tubers for storage, and I thought I would show you the process. It's actually a really easy process to do, and I know it can seem really daunting. I think where it gets a little tricky is the storage part of the whole saving dahlias, because there's so many different methods out there, and I think that it's a little bit of trial and error based on what situation you have in your house, you know, temperatures and what your humidity is like and all of that stuff. But basically today I am going to be cutting back the foliage of the plants. So I'm going to leave a stalk about 4 or so inches, 4 to 6 inches. I'm going to dig the clumps, rinse them, and then we're going to lay them out to dry. And that's basically all I'm going to get done today, but I'll go ahead and show you how I'm planning on packing them as well. So this is what you want them to look like when you're getting ready to dig them. You can see the leaves are looking sad. You can see there were some flowers left on them. I did come out the night before this happened, like that evening, and I picked 3 great big buckets of flowers. It's all of the buckets I had available, and they're sitting on our kitchen floor right now. I haven't even done anything with them yet, but I'm excited to get these lifted. And it is an option depending on your weather. After they look like this, after one frost, you can cut them back and then you can actually leave them in the ground for 1 or 2 weeks depending on the weather. If it's gonna dip really cold like it is for me, it's supposed to be 17 degrees tomorrow night, I'm gonna get them lifted now. But if it's just gonna kind of maintain right around that like light frost area, you can leave them under the ground because that frost line isn't going to go down to where the tubers are, and then it allows them sometimes a chance to form a little bit better eyes if you plan on dividing in the fall, which I'm not going to be doing. I'll be dividing mine in the early spring. Our weather is really erratic here in the fall. Like, it was 40 degrees one day, the plants look beautiful. The next day they look like this. It went down to 23 degrees and between one night and the next. Then it went back up to 40. Tonight it's supposed to hover right around freezing, and then tomorrow night is supposed to be 17. So that's why I want to get these tubers lifted, because that's just too cold. So I'm just going to tackle 1 row at a time. We have 6 rows, 5.5 technically, of dahlias. I'm going to cut back all of the leaves first just to get it all cleaned up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Well, I got the first row cut back, and in just that 10 minutes that it took me to do that, I think the temperature dropped and it's starting to get windy, which is a little bit nice. Doing jobs like this, it's a lot cooler. So there's the debris on the left and the stalks that are all prepped and ready to dig on the right, and I did clean them up as best I could. I'll probably clean them up a little more once they're, you know, at waist level and easier to manage. So now we are ready to dig. I have my digging fork out here. I also brought a shovel just in case. I'm not sure if the soil is going to be fluffy or not, but the most important thing is when you go in to dig, you want to stay a little bit away from the base of the plant. You don't want to be right up on it like this, because then you might pierce, well, you probably would pierce tubers, and once they're pierced, they're no good anymore. It's also important to think about how you want to label the tubers, especially if you want to keep them separated by variety. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I have some like no-name varieties that they can just all go together in the same bin, and it doesn't matter because I don't know the names. And usually, unless you're a collector or you're selling them, it doesn't matter that much. But for me, it's kind of nice. Like when I make a bouquet, I like to be able to tell you guys what is in that bouquet. So anyway, let me show you how I'm going to do it. So I've got here in my box a couple different things. I've got some paper bags, which is what I'm going to be using today. Because like this first section, see, there's my label there telling me that the first 1, 2, 3, 4 are labyrinth, and then the Cafe con Leche starts and goes that way. So I only have 4 tubers for this one variety, and since I'm going to be drying them and not storing them quite yet, I'll put them all in a paper bag. But after that point, I will probably put these tags on them. It's just that it gets a little bit hard, like they can slide off at this point, but it's essentially, oh, one-handed is hard. Whew. Oh, it's like the pull through nursery tags. Come on. There, geez. So I think what I'm going to do, just because it's getting kind of crummy out here, and the process is exactly the same on all of these, I'm going to dig up these first 4 tubers, and I'll show you the process just on these 4. just knowing that going forward, I'm going to be doing the same on all the rest of these. So let's get these dug. All right, so we're in the greenhouse now, a little bit warmer in here, and we're going to use the hose to clean off all of the excess soil, which honestly, like, these are pretty clean. It rained a little bit last night, so I was worried that they were going to be super muddy, but in most cases, I'm guessing that they don't come out of the ground this clean. So you do want to rinse the excess soil off so you can make sure that you know what you're dealing with. Like, you might unearth a tuber that is starting to rot, or a pierced tuber that you didn't realize. Like this right here, I'm just noticing this one snapped off in the ground. You want to remove those kinds of things so that they don't spread in storage, because they act kind of like apples. If you have one that's rotting, it can slowly spread to the rest of them. So let's get these washed off quick. Okay, so now that I've got them pretty cleaned off, you can really see a little bit better what's going on. I can go ahead and cut the main stem down like that. This is pretty much useless. It just helps you get it up out of the ground. And it should look something like this here. So we're just going to inspect all of the tubers and make sure that they're all whole and that we're not dealing with any kind of rot or issues like that. And I think this is all looking pretty good. Let's see what's going on here. Yep, I think that's okay. Perfect. I was noticing, like on this one right here, you can see this tuber, how that one was cut. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this one off right here, because this one is no good once it snaps off. But the rest of them look really great. And then this clump, there was a few that snapped. So I'm just going to get rid of those. Oh, forgot to cut the stem on that one. Ooh, look at that. See, that one was pierced. Bummer. I did decide too, because I only have 3 clumps of this variety and I've got big bins like this where I could put multiple varieties, I'm going to go ahead and label each one of this type individually. It's just the ones where I've got like, 25 of one type of tuber, where I'll use the bags, or I'll just use an individual bin for those, so I don't have to individually label each clump. But that's perfect. That way, we'll know come, next spring when we get ready to divide these, what the varieties are. And I do think that most people divide their tubers in the spring rather than now. I mean, it's a lot easier to tag or label one big clump rather than individually tagging every single tuber. Can you imagine? I just counted, there's 29 viable tubers here left on these 3 stems, and those 3 stems started off as like maybe 2 tubers, maybe 3, I can't really remember. So that's amazing how much they can multiply in one season, and I'm sure they can even multiply more than this, maybe given more fertile soil or that sort of thing. And just for reference, we will probably do a video when I actually divide these, but the way this works, so this is your tuber right here, my fingers, pardon the muddiness. This is the neck of the tuber, and this is the eye. See that little swollen kind of bump right there? When you divide these, you want to use a really sharp pair of pruners or a knife, and you actually want to cut into this kind of stalk area and make sure that each one of these tubers has an eye that goes along with it, because that's the growth point right there. You can see the eye for that one right there. It's really interesting. And sometimes when you have huge big clumps, some people will go ahead and cut, they'll like look straight down on the stem here, and they'll go ahead and cut the whole thing in half to make it more manageable. But you can see, like on this side here, I want to be careful not to break anything, but there's a swollenness right here at the end. So there's the tuber, the neck of the tuber, and then the swollen growth point right in there. You probably see it better once this is gone, but anyway, we'll do something more in depth. And there are videos out there showing that, and like little pictures that show you kind of a diagram of what to look for. So at this point, once the tubers have been rinsed off, you do need to let them dry, but not for a super long time. Usually it's just 24 hours. You let them dry up just enough to get them into storage. You don't want to let them set out to where they start to desiccate, because they do dry out pretty quickly, especially here where it's so dry. So I'm going to go ahead, even though these aren't quite dry, and I'm going to take them out of this bin after I show you how I'm going to pack them to let them dry. I do want to show you how they're going to be going into cold storage, which I'm going to be putting them in our root cellar, where it's going to maintain, you want them somewhere between 40 and 55 degrees. Somewhere where it's not too warm that they're going to dry out, but not too cold that they're going to freeze. I got to go get my supplies real quick. All right, so I've basically got everything I need. I've got the crate that was already sitting here. So you just want to make sure it's a breathable container. It can be a cardboard box. You just don't want it to be solid like a Rubbermaid tote or something like that. So these are the crates my bulbs come in, and I have several of them, so this is going to work really nicely. And then I'm using a double layer of burlap. And I think most people will recommend you use several layers of newspaper, but I don't even know where to get my hands on newspaper. I've never subscribed to a newspaper before. Everything's digital, so I don't have that kind of supply laying around, but we get concrete delivered with tons of burlap. So we do have a nice stack of that, and I think for me it's going to work out nice because burlap is breathable, and we're a very dry climate, so it's not going to harbor extra moisture like some other things might. So anyway, I've got that lined, double lined, so there's 2 burlap sacks there. And then we're going to be using vermiculite to store the tubers in, which looks like that right there. And you know, people have mixed opinions about what to use. Some people like to use vermiculite, some people use peat moss, some people will use wood shavings. And I think it's, again, it's kind of a trial and error thing, and finding what works best for your climate and what works best for you just through experience. So anyway, what I'm going to do is, and oh, here's the bag so you can see what that looks like there. I'm going to lightly moisten the vermiculite. Usually, like for a full 5-gallon bucket, you want to add like 1 cup of water. But I didn't fill it quite all that way because it's too hard to mix. So I'm just going to drizzle a tiny bit of water in there with my hose, mix it up, and then we'll put a light layer of it at the bottom of our crate, and then we'll start nestling in our tubers. All right, we've got our first one nestled into the corner there, and we just want to pack that vermiculite around each one of the tubers so that all the tubers are not touching. We don't want each clump touching each other. And then I've got enough of a layer over here that I'm going to add in my second clump here. And the third can go right in like that. So let me put a layer of vermiculite over all of this. So that looks pretty darn good. What I would do if I was actually packing these today with, you know, all the rest of my tubers being ready as well, I wouldn't fill it all the way to where this one was covered because this one sticks way up. So I would start packing in more groupings of tubers kind of around this, making sure that they're not touching this. And then as I fill this, this would eventually be covered by vermiculite as well. And then when you're all done with the whole tub, you just fold your extra burlap over the sides to cover it, kind of like a lid. All cozy like that. Do you guys hear the wind? I mean, it sounds maybe a little worse in here because of the plastic. Oh. That's basically all there is to this first part of digging and storing dahlias. Of course, I mean, keep in mind that I did skip the drying step, which is essential. I just wanted, in an effort to show you how I'm going to pack and store mine, I really wanted to skip that so I could show that to you. So I will be taking these tubers out of this crate, and they will dry with the others that I dig out today. So in short, I mean, it's basically just cleaning off the tops of your dahlias, so cutting them back to, 4 to 6 inch stalks so you have something to grab onto to get them out of the ground. And then you lift them carefully with a digging fork, tapping off any excess soil out in the garden. Bring them somewhere where you can hose them down quick, and that way you can determine if there are any tubers that need to be removed. Anything that has been, pierced or cut or that are rotting, because that can quickly spread to the rest of the stuff in your storage bin. And then you allow them to dry for 24 hours somewhere where they will not freeze, which means I will be putting mine inside, because I just checked, it's supposed to be 30 degrees tonight, and even out here in the cold frame, that's iffy and I don't want to risk it. So depending on your climate, it'll take, give or take, 24 hours for them to dry. You don't want them to harbor any excess moisture around those tubers. And then you pack them to store them as soon as they're dry. And you can try out several methods. I mean, like I said, you could use newspaper, several layers of newspaper as your like outer barrier. You can use as your interior storing medium. You can use peat moss, wood chips, vermiculite. There's probably other things that people have used in the past, and it may just be a matter of trying different things out. And then once they're packed, they go into storage 40 to 55 degrees, somewhere where they won't be too warm or too cold. And then you want to check on them at least once a month. And I mean, check on every single bin. Don't just check on one and let that be your meter, because there may be one bin that's extra dry, or one bin where you've got something rotting that you can't tell unless you get in there. So, you just want to make it a habit to check on them once a month and address any issues that might arise. If they need a little bit of moisture, you can mist them down with a spray bottle. If you need to remove a tuber because you can start to like see some sliminess, or you can smell something, then you can take care of those problems and you won't ruin the rest of the tubers. And I just realized I probably could have just run down that entire list at the beginning of this video. Could have made it a lot more simple for you guys. Anyway, I'm such a visual person though. I have to see somebody do it in order for it to really sink in, and I usually have to see somebody do it more than once. I'm a slow learner. And then we will be dividing in spring sometime. Like, you can pull them out in March or April. Even when you're not quite ready to plant, you can divide them then when you have a little bit more time. Then you can toss them right back into your bins and then pull them out again in a month once it's warmed up to plant them. So we will show you when we get ready to do that. So you guys know what I'm in for the rest of the day, and probably most of tomorrow, to get all of these things lifted and stored. It's just such a good thing to do if you have time. Like, I don't judge. If you want to treat them as annuals, go for it. They are just such an investment, especially when I planted 275 and I bought most of those. Floret Flower did send out a few, but it's an initial investment. And so you really want to get the most mileage you can out of them. And if you can multiply your crop and then share your tubers with other people, like, how fun is that? I know lots of people who would like to, like myself included, have gifts of dahlia tubers given to them. Who wouldn't like that? So anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for today. I'm going to refrain from showing you the rest of this project because it's going to probably just look like I'm right in the middle of some kind of a dust tornado out there. So I hope you're all having a great day. I hope this video is helpful, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.